Okay. Good day, everyone out there in TV land or YouTube land. I don't know what should we call it these days. Um, so it's Am Lee, your everyday light worker, here to give you some coaching on toxic work environments. So this is something that almost everybody in America is familiar with because in America we tend to have working environments that are incredibly toxic. And as a civil rights litigator in the area of equal employment opportunity, I've seen this time and time again in many different formats. So I've seen workplaces where people are being harassed. That's pretty common in the federal government, especially if you bring an equal employment opportunity complaint. They have all of these resources that encourage you to do it. However, once you do it, you're likely going to be retaliated against. Um, that's a whole thing. That's its own type of discrimination, retaliation for having brought the complaint in the first place. But another thing, uh, environments can just be generally toxic, and they can be toxic in a number of different ways. So, I want to talk about my recent experience with one of my clients' toxic work environments. So, when she got this job, it was a work environment that she wasn't that familiar with. So she just wasn't that familiar with the culture and the people. It was a very different work environment than her typical working environments. And she's like, I'm not comfortable in this culture. I'm not sure I understand this culture. And I'm like, well, let's go through it together. Tell me what you're encountering at work, and I'll tell you what I think it might be, what's going on. So that's one of the many services that I can offer you. I can literally coach you through your job performance as you are on the job and doing what it is that you're trying to do, trying to progress in that place. I can give you tips on what I think is going on in the culture, the organizational culture, because I have a lot of experience with that. So I knew right off the bat from the way she was describing things going on, the culture was disorganized. So that often leads to a toxic work environment because the culture doesn't know how to run itself correctly, and so it starts running itself incorrectly. So, what seemed to be going on with this organization is that it wasn't clear who was doing what and who was reporting to whom, and they kept reorganizing it. It's like when an organization is playing musical chairs with the jobs, there's a problem. Leadership is faulty because good leadership is going to delegate clearly and say, this person does this job, this department is overseeing this function within the organization. When you don't have those lines very clearly drawn, it leads to a lot of dysfunction. So that was what was going on in her organization. She kept getting moved around. Amber, here. Oh, that's my Alexa. She talks too much. She kept getting moved around from different departments, and duties kept being reassigned, and duties kept getting added. And this is something that you have to be careful of if you are good at your job. Oftentimes, that doesn't lead to anything except more work. It should lead to a promotion, it should lead to recognition. Sadly, that is rarely the case, especially if you're a woman. I'm just telling you what I've seen over 30 years. So it is unfortunate that, when you are really good at what you do, you're not, it's rare that you're going to be recognized for that. But you need to know that unless an organization is very organized and very well structured, it's really hard for good work to get recognized. And so, what usually happens is that someone just recognizes that you're a good worker, and someone in power higher up in the organization than you are will take your work and pass it off as their own. That's very, very common, especially in toxic organizations. So that was what was happening to my client. People kept taking her work, and this was the first problem. She started out reporting to one supervisor. And from what I can tell, what it looks like from sitting on the outside looking in, what it looked like was going on with this organization is they were reorganizing and they weren't quite sure who they wanted in what position. So this supervisor that brought her on wasn't highly favored in that organization. So other people started to take or assign work to his subordinate. So my client was a subordinate to this person, so they see how well she could do things. So they started to like take her and put her in other departments that wasn't his department. So he loses his good resource. And he's resentful about that because, he brought her on, he trained her in the organization, and now she's working for other people in the organization, taking time away from his department and his tasks that he needs to get done. So she ended up working for three supervisors, and she ended up having way more work than she could complete in the time that she was given. So, she's coming to work every day. She's working as hard as she can, but she's got like 40 hours of work to do in every 8-hour day. And she is complaining about it to the appropriate people. She's complaining to human resources. She's complaining to her three supervisors. She's like, I have more work. You guys are assigning me more work than I can do. Largely, the organization doesn't care because they're not properly structured. They're disorganized. So there's no one really to say, hey, you know what? This isn't working. We need to, treat this employee's time as if, we need to be reasonable about it. We can't just assign her an unlimited amount of duties just because she can handle it. And she couldn't handle it, but just because she's capable and competent. We have to be aware that, her time is limited and assign the time to assign time, enough time for her to complete the task that we've assigned, and be mindful of her time and mindful of the fact that she can't complete all these tasks. It's not possible. But that didn't happen. And she was getting more and more stressed out with all of the duties that they were assigning. So, employers love to say that you have this job and other duties as assigned. Now, here's the thing with the other duties as assigned. If they're getting unreasonable with it, if they're assigning you way more work than you can possibly handle in an 8-hour work day, then that is abusive and that is toxic. And you complain, nothing's done. That's a toxic work environment. So, this particular client had to make some decisions. And a lot of people, when it comes to making a decision about their job, it's very stressful because most people need their jobs to pay their bills. She was fortunate in that she was in school, and so she could quit her job and continue with her studies and take out student loans to survive on until she found another job. So everybody's not in that position, but you know, it comes to a point where you can't really stay in the job. And she was told this by some consultants that came in to help this organization with their diversity and inclusion efforts. She felt that she was being demeaned because she was different, and she felt like, she was constantly being chastised for no other reason than that she was different, because as it was clear by all the work that she was getting assigned, she was very, very competent. Um, and the consultant said, you can't stay in this position without it impacting your health. So that's something that you have to consider. Toxic work environments will very quickly impact your health. And so once it's clear to you as the employee that the position has become untenable, unmanageable, it's affecting you, it's affecting your health, you're waking up depressed, you're calling in sick, you're getting sick, you don't want to go to work. All of that was happening to my client. She's getting sick, not wanting to go to work. Um, when that kind of thing is happening to you, you need to find another place to work. That's simple. Um, but a lot of people stress over that decision because, it's just a matter of, well, I need this job to live. What am I going to do? Things will work out. Things will work out. But while you are in that decision, number one, you should always be looking. When you get a job, you should always be looking for another job in case you run into this particular dilemma. And it happens a lot. Sadly, it happens a lot. And especially after COVID, for whatever reason, work environments have become incredibly, incredibly toxic. So you just got to know that this is the water we're all swimming in right now. Be very good at what you do. Always be making connections and contacts at the job so that you can be ready to leave when it's time to go. And um, when it's time to go, leave. That's the best advice anyone could give you. Leave and worry about how things are going to work out later, because they will work out. They always do. And the toxic work environment takes too much of a heavy toll for you to stay. It will begin to impact your health. So that's the reason that you have to leave when you're confronted with toxic work environments. And we could go on about this topic, but that was the story that I wanted to share with you today about this client who had to leave her toxic work environment. And I'll give you updates on how it's going, but she is much, much happier now that she has decided to do that. So it was worth it, clearly. All right, guys, talk to you later. Don't forget that life is beautiful and extraordinary. Okay? Talk to you later. Am Lee, your everyday light worker.